Arsenal are on the verge of a massive transformation this January transfer window. We're talking $200 million transfer changes to this squad. It could definitely redefine the club's trajectory for this season. From transfers that are smart to bold departures potentially, this is the blueprint for the Gunners' next chapter. A 1-1 draw this weekend to Fulham really shows that something needs to change for Arsenal. Set pieces, defensively, they look good. Midfield, they look okay at times. They're just lacking a little bit of consistency. And in attack, they just look like they can't finish that final opportunity. I think they ended up with 2 expected goals in this match against Fulham. They just need something's not clicking. What is it? Let's talk. Let's figure out what needs to change at Arsenal. First, Arsenal needs a new architect behind the scenes. Who's the right fit to take the project forward after the departure of Edu to the Nottingham Forest project, of course. Edu has been instrumental, but his departure leaves a gap in leadership for Arsenal. They have 3 intriguing options ahead of them. They have Jason Ado, was Edu's right-hand man. He's familiar with the Arsenal DNA. He's a safe and steady choice for Arsenal. However, you could see a power dynamic shift if a person that was the right-hand man of Edu comes in. Maybe Arteta tries to fill some of the void. Maybe that causes friction in the squad. Maybe this isn't the safest option. We'll just have to wait and see what Arsenal decides. This is going to be a very important decision, as it will really decide who will take Arsenal to that next level and make them title winners, not just title challengers, not just title contenders, title winners. Up next, we have George Schmadtke, a name that might raise eyebrows, but worked alongside Klopp in the Premier League. He worked this most recent season, the final Premier League season of Jurgen Klopp era. He worked with him, brought in players like Ryan Gravenberch. Could his experience, translate to Arsenal? That's something we have to wait and see. He's been in the game a little bit, but is he really the guy to take Arsenal to the next level? I'm not entirely sure, but it's a very, very solid option. And then lastly, we've got a big name, Luis Campos, a visionary. He's known for unearthing elite talents to Ligue 1, Mbappe, Osimhen. He's a dream hire for Arsenal and the club wanting to build sustainability in the squad where they can bring in assets early and they can make them stars. Arsenal are a club that has been built on the idea of creating superstars. Who Arsenal chooses could help determine how they spend this $200 million investment, whether it thrives and it really takes Arsenal to that next level or if it's going to flop. Now, Arsenal has a little bit of financial leeway. They didn't spend much in the summer because of some issues with sustainability and, trying to fit into the financial regulations of the Premier League. But every transformation requires tough decisions. And for Arsenal, it's time to cut some big names loose. Starting off with our left backs, we have Zinchenko. I think you can get about 15, 16 million for him. Clearly, he's a very talented technical player, but he's just not really what Arsenal needs now. He wasn't available for the match against Fulham, and it just hasn't really worked out outside of that first season. Speaking of the first season, another player I think needs to be out the door is Gabriel Jesus. It's time for a bigger, more clinical profile in that number 9 position for Arsenal, a position we'll be talking about later here in this video, so be on the lookout for that. Be looking forward to that today. And then 4 Premier League goals since the start of last season for Jesus. I still think he's got a name behind him. I still think he has some value behind him for the right price. I think you can get about 30 million from the right team if you sell properly, and depending again on who that new sporting director is for Arsenal. The other 2 players are going to be a player who's been one of the longest serving players for Arsenal, a fan favorite, but his injury record and lack of minutes means a $12 million departure for Kieran Tierney. Last appearance for the Gunners was the Community Shield in 2023, and he hasn't even got a look this season at all. And then finally, quite possibly one of the most difficult decisions here, a creative force, but with Martinelli on the left, cashing in on 25 million feels pragmatic for Leandro Trossard. He has served the club, but I believe it is best to cash in while the club still can. These moves might sting for Arsenal fans, but they're crucial in taking the team to the next level. Up next, we have to talk about Martin Odegaard. He is irreplaceable for Arsenal, but who steps in when the captain needs a breather? Arsenal need quality and they need potential here. I just want to start off by taking a look at how good Odegaard has been in the last year. His per 90 stats: 10.38 progressive passes, 2.8 progressive carries, 1.47 successful take-ons, and 6 shot creating actions per 90 for the Norwegian attacking midfielder. There's a few players we can look at here. I think one of the biggest ones is a player that just sits behind him on the bench right now, Ethan Nwaneri, a talent. 17 years old, wonder kid. He's shown flashes of brilliance and deserves more minutes for the Gunners. A few other options we're going to take a look deeper into are Eberechi Eze and Arda Güler, who I think could be good long-term pickups for Arsenal in that backup 10 position, and obviously both of them can play out on the wing as well as Arsenal needs. More specifically with Eze now, he's an experienced Premier League option, though his form this season has been a little inconsistent. He's got as many goal contributions as Odegaard with half the minutes, or Odegaard has half the minutes played on him. If we look at his underlying numbers, though, again, 4.39 progressive passes, that's half of what Odegaard has. When we look at progressive carries, he has a little bit higher, 3.01 per 90, 2.37 successful take-ons, and then 4.78 shot creating actions for Crystal Palace in the last year from Eberechi Eze. And then looking at the other option, we've got Arda Güler, who we've already talked about a little bit, a wild card, struggling for minutes in Real Madrid. He's an unreal talent, waiting to explode. Wait, have I heard this before? I think a loan option with about 50 million dollars could be the perfect deal here for Arda Güler signature at Arsenal. I think you start with the loan, kind of see what you want, and then have the option to bring him in permanently as a player that really can do a job. He can play at the attacking mid position. He can also play on the right wing, as I've discussed earlier. 4.83 progressive passes, 3.22 progressive carries, 2.03 successful take-ons, and 5.21 shot creating actions. Now here's the biggest standout, and it's a number that you don't really talk about with your attacking midfielders. You really think of creator, you think of a spark, you think of assist, you think of flashy passes, flair, you think of those things when you think of a 10, when you think of Martin Odegaard, for example. But one of the things you don't talk about with Martin Odegaard is his ability to lead the press, his intensity on the pitch, and what he brings from defensive output for Arsenal. Since joining Arsenal, Odegaard is 4th or 5th in tackles made for the Gunners. Out of all players, that's defenders, midfielders, attackers, he's 4th or 5th on that list of tackles since he joined the club. He makes 1.3 tackles per 90 in the last year. That's compared to Eze, who's at 1.19, and then Arda Güler, who's at 1.89, who plays in a little bit slightly different position for Real Madrid, and of course a Turkey side that doesn't have as much of the ball. He needs to go win the ball back a little bit more when he's playing with Turkey. For their investing here ensures Arsenal can dominate games even when the captain needs a rest. Let's move on to maybe the most exciting position, the number 9. As I've already alluded to earlier, a common problem for Arsenal has been open play goals. Goals. Here's how to bring firepower to this Arsenal squad this year. First of all, we got to talk about, removing Trossard from the equation. We've already talked about selling him. We really need Havertz as a lone 9. And looking at him in the last year, this is among all of his games, whether he's played as attacker or as a midfielder. He's got 0.39 non-penalty goals per 90, 3.19 shot creating actions, 2.79 progressive passes, 1.66 progressive carries, 0.49 interceptions, 0.88 tackles, and 3.37 aerials won. We have to talk about those defensive numbers because, again, it's very important for Arsenal and how they play. They really want to press it from the press in the front and really have attackers with high energy. Nobody's bigger than the press. Nobody doesn't have to press. You all have to be involved to really get the best out of your Arsenal's press. Now our 2 options, both of them from Sweden. We've got Alexander Isak and Victor Gyökeres. So starting off, Alexander Isak, primarily proven quality. Newcastle are wanting in the upwards of 100 million for him. But Arsenal could stag him, I think, for about 90. Right now, Arsenal and Chelsea are both waiting with about 80 million on the table. The Swedish striker netted a goal against the Gunners earlier this season, but let's look at his underlying numbers. We've got 0.56 non-penalty goals per 90, 3.06 shot creating actions on top of that. Looking at how he progresses the ball, he has about a slightly better progressive passes with 2.82, and his progressive carry numbers are really what makes the difference compared to Kai Havertz, 2.71. Defensively, he's not up there with Kai Havertz, 0.21 interceptions, 0.31 tackles, 0.66 aerials won. His aerials won is very low for a player of his size. You would expect a little bit better from Alexander Isak, but of course, looking at how Newcastle plays, that could be a part of it as well. When you take a look at the grand scheme of things. Now we got to talk about probably one of the most exciting players in Europe right now, Victor Gyökeres, with 34 goals already this season in all competitions. He's already shown he's ready for the top level. Sporting's main man was kept silent earlier this year by Gabriel specifically, and Saliba was involved in that game as well, of course. But let's look at his numbers. Obviously, these are a little bit stray because he's been playing primarily in Liga Portugal, of course, where he spent his last year. 0.79 non-penalty goals, 4.73 shot creating actions, fewer progressive passes even than Kai Havertz with 1.49, but his progressive carries of 3.74 shows he's able to get out there on the wing, progress the ball as well on that left-hand side. He's been doing that for Sporting as well. A position we're going to talk about as well is that left-hand side of Arsenal and how they can strengthen that moving forward. 0.15 interceptions, 0.35 tackles per 90. Again, very low, similar to Alexander Isak. But when you're the main number 9 for a team, you don't really worry about those defensive numbers as much. And 1.66 aerials won is an improvement on Alexander Isak, but not at the level of Kai Havertz has been for Arsenal. The right striker really could turn Arsenal into title favorites overnight. Now we have to talk, of course, as I've already just mentioned, the left wing needs balance. Can Arsenal find the right fit? The solution isn't always about players when I'm talking about things in these videos. It's about structure. But we are going to talk about a player later on, but I do want to talk about structure first. So obviously, let's talk about Martinelli's numbers, and then we'll talk about the structure, and then we'll talk about the player that if you want to make a signing, of course, with Trossard's departure and Sterling just being alone, who would you go get? Martinelli, 0.29 non-penalty goals, 3.41 shot creating actions, 2.07 progressive passes, 5.15 progressive carries, 1.74 successful take-ons, and 1.41 tackles. So very good tackle numbers as well on the left wing from Martinelli. But we have to talk about structure. Martinelli's best season was with a true left center mid in the name of Granit Xhaka. That was a outstanding. The Martinelli with Granit Xhaka at left center mid was the best level of Martinelli we've seen in an Arsenal shirt. With Mikel Merino coming in, we expect Mikel Merino to play at that left center mid position. Declan Rice moved to a lone 6, and then eventually Thomas Partey be phased out of the squad or onto the bench. Is what it looked like was going to happen. Obviously, that has yet to happen really in the starting 11. We saw Partey, Rice, Jorginho, and Odegaard in the lineup today. It's very difficult to see why Merino isn't starting. I think if he could get on that left center mid spot, it could really free up space and give Martinelli more license to be the player that he once was when we had Granit Xhaka kind of assisting him in the build-up there. But if we want to talk about players to come in, I do think Jamie Gittins, currently at Dortmund, is a very talented player. Englishman, of course, a dynamic left winger with raw talent. Pairing him with, 0.4 non-penalty goals, 3.65 shot at creating actions, both better than Gabriel Martinelli. Slightly lower progressive passes with 1.92, and then 5.88 progressive carries, 4.1 successful take-ons, and 1.6 tackles, all better than Martinelli's current numbers. Obviously played fewer minutes, so his per 90s could be a little bit skewed one way or another. But I do think that it's a position that you could really look forward to. This trio could transfer Arsenal's left-hand side into one of the most dangerous, not just in the Premier League, but in Europe. After all these changes that we've discussed, here's how Arsenal's squad is going to look. I think this squad would go on and really be able to push Liverpool to the limits. I think they would leave City in the dust. This City team, they would leave behind. And I think these 3 players would really put Arsenal over the edge with just 200 million in investments, a few departures. Let's go ahead. Let's get right into it. Starting off in goal, we keep David Raya, keep Neto. for the time being in that goalkeeper slot. At right back, we've got Ben White, Jurrien Timber, and Tomiyasu. Obviously, Tomiyasu not playing as much as you may like for Arsenal lately. He's been very struggling for fitness. At our right center back, we've got Saliba and Ben White. They can play there. Gabriel and Kivior at your left center back, and then your left back, Calafiori, Timber, and then of course Kivior or Tomiyasu as well. Looking into our midfield, though, there's a lot of depth there. I think right now we've got Declan Rice, Thomas Partey, Mikel Merino, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Jorginho, all getting minutes there in the midfield. And then attacking mid, we're going to talk about our first signing. We've obviously got Odegaard, Nwaneri, but I think Arda Güler, loan with a 50 million buy option, I think would be the perfect price you could set there. I don't know where else you would go with this. I don't think Eze is the guy. I think Güler's just got a little bit more to prove, a little bit more chip on his shoulder. I think he'd be more willing to be involved in the press, and that's why I've gone with him. And then on the right wing, of course, we've got Saka, Güler, and Nwaneri as well. And then, of course, Sterling can play on the right-hand side as if necessary. Up top, I've gone with Alexander Isak and Havertz. Alexander Isak, 90 million is what I'm going with at his price range. I don't think Gyökeres is the answer for Arsenal. I think that you go and get Alexander Isak. I think he's a little more of a team player, a little less, maybe not the maverick that you want at the number 9 position, but talented, goals, everything you need if you're Arsenal going into this January window. And then lastly, last signing, we've got Martinelli and Sterling on the left-hand side, but we're going to go get Jamie Gittins anyways, despite, even if we make the change at the midfield positions, if we change the system slightly to better cater to Martinelli and what he needs, I do think Jamie Gittins would be a good signing moving forward. I think you could get him for about 60 million right now if you were to go into the market. Obviously, he's had very good performances in the Champions League, but he's listed at about 35 million market value, and that's going to be corrected. I think he's going to be about 60 million, 70 million by the time Dortmund sell him. With these moves, Arsenal don't just rebuild. They position themselves as a juggernaut, ready to dominate for years to come. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more insight into the Premier League. We did a video. If you want to check it out, it's going to be right here. Premier League talk. We talked about fixing Manchester City this transfer window as well, how to get them clicking, because they just drew 2-2 to Crystal Palace in a very good game. But that was all for my $200 million transformation of Arsenal. Big moves in the transfer market for the Gunners coming up this January. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.